You've probably heard, that in the desert, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over, and there's a little bit of truth to that.
In 1987, low water flows and litigation led Idaho to start the process of adjudication for water rights in the Snake River Basin to catalog and quantify the more than 150,000 claims in the East Snake Plain. Ultimately, the Snake River Basin Adjudication, along with the development of a new water management model by researchers at the University of Idaho, now allows the Idaho Department of Water Resources to effectively manage ground and surface water at the same time. This is considered to be one of the most comprehensive solutions for water use and management created to date. Nearly the entire state of Idaho is drained by the Snake River system, a vast source for agriculture, aquaculture, and electricity generation. The Snake River is vital to the economy of the West. The University of Idaho continues to lead efforts in research, management, and legal issues pertaining to water worldwide.
Water in Idaho has certain uniquenesses, but then if you look at the type of problems we deal with, it may be irrigation related, it may be the water in rivers, changes in snowpack timing, or maybe the quality of water that we either consume or recreate in. Those are issues that are worldwide. Studying them in Idaho tends to help us understand them in other parts of the world as well.
The Snake River Basin is home to 500,000 residents and is the main source of irrigation to more than 100 different species of crops. John Tracy, director of Idaho Water Resources Research Institute, explains.
When we talk water, and you say the Snake Plain, as big of an agricultural production area it is, in the ag community everybody knows it, but in the general public, they think Central Valley of California, they think Iowa corn, production, they think that, and they're not thinking, this part of Idaho and how big it is. Over 100 years ago, some of the earliest reclamation projects were developed on the Snake River and its tributaries, and this has led to it being one of the biggest agricultural production regions in the United States.
In the desert, the water is a limited resource. There is only so much. And if we look at the Milner Dam system, where the irrigation water is diverted, the Snake River is dried up at that dam during the summer. And it seems as though our water is reduced from what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the question then comes up, if that water is not available for irrigation, what is that going to do to the economy of the Magic Valley, and what's that going to do to the ag producers? But what we have to understand is it goes beyond the farm gate.
As more farmers began to irrigate their crops, groundwater development expanded rapidly in the Magic Valley, which lowered the groundwater levels. Though it was unknown at the time, this draw also had an effect on the surface water levels of the Snake River. This affected the spring flows in the Hagerman area, a location known for its expansive aquaculture production due to the cold and clean water that flows from the ground. In just a 12-mile stretch along the Snake River, roughly 70% of the nation's commercial trout is produced.
The commercial entities and whatnot are variously affected. Some of them have 90% water losses. That's their livelihood. They also have the older water rights and that sort of thing. And so it's been a very contentious issue. I think the big thing that folks don't realize or may not realize is that the water that we run through these facilities and whatnot is just passed through. So this isn't a consumptive use of water. Just to meet the demand of the population by 2050, aquaculture will have to grow by over 50%. It's the most efficient means of producing animal-based protein on the planet.
With reduced flows in the Springs area and Idaho water law requiring that groundwater and surface water be administered conjunctively, there needed to be an understanding of how groundwater pumpage would impact surface flows and vice versa. To be able to understand this, you need a fairly sophisticated understanding of your hydrologic system, which required the development of a fairly complex model, which eventually became known as the East Snake Plain Aquifer Management Model.
This model was developed by Gary Johnson, a researcher at the University of Idaho, along with his colleagues and a team of graduate students. It models the effect of groundwater pumping on surface water hydrology, defines objectives for modeling efforts, assesses data and technical needs, and provides technical support and peer review for the modeling process. The Idaho Department of Water Resources uses this model to help manage ground and surface water of the Snake River Basin conjunctively. Barb Cousins is a professor of law at the University of Idaho and teaches extensively on the topic.
And particularly in Idaho, which is not true in all states, we've tried to cover both surface and groundwater. But one of the other water rights in the system are water rights defined by federal law. And those are water rights for Native American reservations, and they're water rights for any federal reservation. We're finding that unless the people who actually rely on that water resource are part of the dialogue for developing a solution, that we don't get to a final resolution that's satisfactory.
As part of the adjudication process, federal and tribal water rights also need to be considered. This proved especially difficult for Native American tribes that had senior, but often undocumented rights.
So prior to the adjudication, private water rights had sort of a cloud hanging over their title. There's a potentially very large, unquantified water rights that would be senior to them. And then tribes and federal reservations had considerable difficulty in protecting or, in the case of tribes, developing their water right, because it's vaguely defined and unquantified. Adjudication solves that for both sides. But at some point, and we're at that point, you start to reach the limits in further development, and then you have to really sit down and figure out how you can be more efficient in your use, how you can trade water among users, how you can change timing, how you can change what you're using it for. And that requires a conversation both between the scientists that understand how to do that and the lawyers that understand the legal mechanisms for doing it or the legal barriers to doing that.
It involves a lot of people. It is a very social process. All right, so the technical aspects probably are fairly straightforward, one might say, but it's the social processes that really are the challenge. We bring students in from the different disciplines and make them work together like the real world situation. So the technical people and the policy people together try to share insights and their knowledge to attack these kinds of real-time problems.